The water ran hot, scalding her skin, yet it did nothing to wash away the weight pressing on her chest. Mara Duvall pressed her forehead against the cool tile, letting the water cascade over her face as her silent sobs filled the cramped bathroom. At 30, she had imagined her life differently comfortable, predictable, perhaps even a little lonely, but at peace. Instead, she had inherited a small ranch from an estranged uncle, one she barely knew, tucked into the dusty outskirts of a frontier town called Red Hollow. And now, alone in that lonely house, every creak of the floorboards reminded her of the isolation she had willingly, or perhaps foolishly chosen. Mara turned the shower handle slightly, letting the steam cloud the mirror until her reflection disappeared, leaving only her trembling form visible through the mist. Her auburn hair clung to her shoulders, soaked and heavy, and the skin of her arms bore faint scratches from the thorn bush she had wrestled with earlier that day. She wiped her eyes, but more tears replaced them immediately. She didn't know if it was grief for the past, fear of the unknown, or the simple, knowing loneliness that had settled deep in her bones. Outside, the sun was setting behind the jagged horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson. A storm was coming. She could smell it in the dusty wind slipping through the gaps in the old wooden shutters. Mara had always loved storms in theory. They promised change. Yet tonight, it seemed to mock her, rumbling with the threat of something she wasn't ready to face. A sudden knock at the door made her flinch, the sound echoing strangely through the bathroom. Her pulse leapt. She called out, her voice hoarse from crying, "Who's there?" No answer, only a pause, followed by the knock again. Mara wrapped a towel around herself and cautiously stepped out, water dripping onto the wooden floor. The hall was dim, lit only by the last streaks of sunlight falling through dusty curtains. On the threshold stood a man unlike anyone she had ever seen. Broad-shouldered, with dark, piercing eyes that seemed to hold secrets of centuries, he carried himself with a quiet strength that immediately unsettled her. His long black hair fell past his shoulders, adorned with small tribal beads, and the leather vest he wore did little to hide the lean, powerful muscles of his arms. He was an Apache warrior, though Mara had never imagined one would come knocking at her door in Red Hollow. I wasn't expecting anyone," she stammered, her voice wavering. "This is private property." The man tipped his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I apologize for intruding," he said, his voice low and steady, carrying an accent she couldn't place. "I mean no harm. My name is Tayan. I've been sent to deliver a warning." Mara's heart skipped. A warning? In the middle of nowhere, from a stranger who looked as if he could tear the earth itself apart with his bare hands? She wanted to slam the door, to retreat into the warmth of her small home, to deny the strange pull that made her stomach knot with both fear and curiosity. Warning? About what? She asked, trying to mask the trembling in her voice. Tayan's eyes scanned the horizon as the first drops of the storm began to patter against the wooden roof. "You've inherited more than land," he said slowly, almost as if choosing his words carefully. "There are people who do not want you here. And there are things you do not yet understand about your uncle's past, about the land itself." Mara stepped back, unsure whether to laugh or scream. "I don't understand," she said. "I just thought I'd have a quiet life here. A place to heal." The Apache warrior's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity in his eyes did not fade. "Quiet lives are rare in these parts," he said, "and the past has a way of finding those who try to ignore it. I can help you, if you let me." Something deep in Mara stirred a mix of fear, intrigue, and the faintest spark of hope. She had spent so long running from the unknown, from the mysteries that made her pulse quicken, that the very presence of Tayan made her heart ache with anticipation she couldn't name. Lightning flashed in the distance. illuminating the broad porch and casting long shadows across the floor. Mara shivered, not from the cold, but from the electricity in the air between them. She knew, in that moment, that her life in Red Hollow had just begun and that nothing would ever be the same. Tayan's hand hovered briefly in the air, as if offering reassurance rather than a threat. "The storm is coming," he said. "And with it, the truth." Mara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of both dread and curiosity pressing down on her. She nodded slightly, stepping aside to let him in. The unknown had arrived at her door, and for the first time in weeks. She didn't run from it. The rain began in earnest, drumming against the roof as the two strangers, one by birth, one by circumstance, stood in the dim hallway of a house that was about to reveal secrets older than either of them could imagine. Mara led Tayan into the main room of the house, her towel still clinging to her soaked skin, the wooden floorboards creaking under their steps. She could feel the storm outside beginning to rage, the wind howling like a living thing, rattling the shutters and sending flashes of lightning across the room. It was as if nature itself was warning her, confirming the unease she felt at having a stranger, an Apache warrior, standing in her home. Tayan removed his leather cloak, revealing his muscular, scarred chest, and hung it on a peg near the door. The beads and small charms in his hair clicked softly as he moved, a subtle rhythm that seemed almost meditative. Mara couldn't take her eyes off him. Not out of attraction, though there was that too, but because he carried an air of authority that made her feel simultaneously vulnerable and safe. "I need to understand," Mara said, her voice shaking slightly as she poured 2 cups of weak coffee from the old pot on the stove. "Why my uncle's land? What do you mean by people who don't want me here?" Tayan accepted the cup silently, his gaze distant, as if recalling memories from decades past. "Your uncle was not just a simple rancher," he began carefully. "He was a keeper of knowledge that some will kill to possess. The land you inherited holds secrets old and powerful, ones that he protected, but ones that will call to those with darker intentions once he was gone." Mara set her cup down, gripping it so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Secrets? Dark intentions? I just wanted peace. Why would anyone care about a few acres of land and an old barn?" He stepped closer, his presence commanding, yet calm. "Because the land is not ordinary," he said. "There are markers, signs, and hidden paths. The ones who seek it will come for you, Mara. That is why I was sent, not to threaten you, but to protect you." A sharp clap of thunder shook the house, and Mara flinched. Tayan's hand reached out instinctively, resting lightly on her shoulder. The touch was reassuring, steadying, and Mara realized with a jolt that she hadn't been touched with care in months. She drew a shaky breath, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. "Protect me." "How?" she asked softly. "By keeping you alive," he said simply. "And by showing you what your uncle hid here. Things he believed you were ready to see." Mara stared at him, searching his face for hidden meanings, doubts, anything that could tell her he was lying. But there was nothing, only sincerity, and the quiet strength of a man who had endured more than most could imagine. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I barely knew my uncle." Tayan's eyes softened. "We start where he left the first clue. Follow me." He moved to the far side of the room and tapped a section of the wall near the fireplace. Mara stepped closer, curious. A faint outline of a panel was visible, carved into the wood with precise, almost ceremonial patterns. Tayan pressed a small bead in the center of one design, and the panel clicked open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside were several aged scrolls, maps, and a small, leather-bound journal. The smell of old paper and leather filled the air. "These are his notes," Tayan said, gesturing to the items. "Everything he learned about the land, the threats, the hidden passageways. He trusted you to understand them, to use them wisely. But you must be careful. Others will not hesitate to take what he protected by force if necessary. Mara reached for the journal, her fingers trembling as she opened it. The handwriting was familiar, yet foreign, filled with cryptic diagrams, symbols, and mentions of people she had never heard of. A chill ran down her spine as she read a warning scrawled on the first page. She must never know alone. Danger follows those who inherit the land without guidance. Tayan's presence behind her felt like a shield, but even then, Mara could sense the storm outside intensifying. The wind rattled the windows violently, lightning illuminating the room in jagged bursts. Somewhere beyond the house, in the shadows of Red Hollow, Mara knew someone or something was already moving, watching, waiting. "I don't understand any of this," Mara whispered, tears welling again, but this time from fear mingled with adrenaline. "Why me?" "Because your uncle believed in you," Tayan said, his voice low, almost a growl, yet filled with reverence. "And because the land has chosen you. It does not make mistakes. You have strength, Mara, more than you realize, and I will help you awaken it." For the first time in weeks, Mara felt a flicker of determination ignite inside her. Fear was still there, yes, but now it was tempered with purpose. She could feel the storm as more than a backdrop. It was a reflection of the turbulent path that lay ahead, a trial she had no choice but to face. Tayan's dark eyes met hers, unwavering. "The first step begins tonight," he said, voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "Are you ready?" Mara took a deep breath, gripping the journal tightly. "Yes," she said, her voice firmer now, though her heart still raced. "I'm ready." Outside, the rain pounded against the roof, the wind screamed through the cracks, and Red Hollow braced for a night that would change everything. Inside, Mara and Tayan stood together, two strangers bound by destiny, ready to face secrets older than the land itself. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up, the wind rattling the shutters like skeletal fingers trying to pry open the house. Mara and Tayan stood in silence for a moment, the journal open between them, the flickering lantern casting shadows that danced along the walls. Every page she turned seemed to pull her deeper into a world she had never known, a world of secrets, danger, and long-buried rivalries that stretched back generations. Tayan's gaze never wavered from hers. "Your uncle was meticulous," he said quietly. "Every room, every corner, every artifact in this house is a potential clue. The land itself is alive in a way, guarding what it holds." Mara swallowed hard, gripping the journal tighter. "Alive? What does that even mean?" "Not alive in the way you think," Tayan replied. "The land remembers. It reacts. It has protected those who respect it and punished those who would take it for granted. Your uncle understood this. You must too." She nodded slowly, the storm outside punctuating every word with thunderclaps. "Where do we start?" Tayan motioned toward the far corner of the room, where an old, ornate rug lay atop the floorboards. "Beneath this," he said, kneeling. Mara followed, curiosity warring with unease. With a practiced motion, he lifted the rug to reveal a trapdoor, its edges worn from years of careful use. A faint draft wafted up, carrying the scent of damp earth and aged wood. "You're certain this is safe?" Mara asked, her voice trembling. "I've walked these paths before," he said, his tone calm, though the taut muscles in his arms and chest suggested readiness for any danger. "Follow my lead. Stay close." Mara took a deep breath and nodded. Tayan lifted the trapdoor fully, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The lantern's glow barely reached the bottom, and the air smelled of damp stone and earth. With her heart pounding, Mara descended first, Tayan close behind. The wooden stairs creaked ominously under their weight, the sound magnified in the confined space dot at the bottom. They entered a hidden chamber carved into the bedrock beneath the house. The walls were etched with symbols Mara did not recognize, patterns that seemed to pulse faintly in the lantern light. In the center of the room lay a small pedestal, upon which rested a worn leather satchel and a folded map. "This is your uncle's work," Tayan explained, kneeling beside the pedestal. "He hid this here for you. Everything you need to understand the land's secrets, the threats that will come, is in this satchel." Mara hesitated, then carefully opened it. Inside were letters, small trinkets, and a collection of delicate silver charms shaped like animals. A folded map showed trails, hidden water sources, and markings she couldn't yet comprehend. She felt a shiver run down her spine. This was not just land, it was a puzzle, a legacy that her uncle had entrusted to her. Suddenly, the wind outside howled, sending a faint echo through the hidden chamber. Mara froze. "Did you hear that?" Tayan's eyes narrowed, scanning the dark corners of the room. "The storm masks movement," he said. "But there are others. Someone has come tonight, drawn here by the same secrets your uncle protected." Panic surged through Mara, but Tayan's hand on her shoulder was steady, grounding her. "We have to move quickly," he said. "You must learn to read the map, understand the signs. Only then can we anticipate who is coming and protect what belongs to you." Mara nodded, determination overtaking fear. "Show me. I'll learn." For the next hour, Tayan guided her through the map, pointing out hidden trails, ancient markers, and the significance of the charms in the satchel. Mara listened intently, her mind absorbing every detail, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. Each revelation felt like a piece of herself she hadn't known existed was awakening. A resilience forged from necessity and survival. As they worked, a sudden rumble shook the chamber, not thunder, but footsteps from above. Mara froze, fear tightening her chest. Tayan's gaze was sharp now, focused, every muscle coiled and ready. "They are here," he said quietly. "We must be ready." Lightning struck outside, illuminating the chamber in blinding flashes. Mara's pulse raced, but with Tayan beside her, she felt a courage she had never known. The storm was no longer just outside. It was inside her, awakening a fire she couldn't ignore. "Together," she whispered, almost to herself. Tayan's dark eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "Together," he repeated, and the two stood side by side, ready to face whatever danger had followed the secrets buried beneath the land. Outside, Red Hollow trembled in the storm, but inside, Mara felt the first stirrings of power, purpose, and a bond with a warrior who had come to her door on the night everything changed. The storm outside raged with relentless fury, rain lashing against the wooden roof and lightning illuminating Red Hollow in jagged bursts. Mara and Tayan emerged from the hidden chamber, carrying the satchel and map. The air in the house was thick with the scent of wet wood and electricity. Mara felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. Every step forward seemed to pull her deeper into a world she had never imagined. Tayan moved with a fluid confidence, each step deliberate, muscles taut and ready. His presence was like a shield, and Mara felt herself leaning on it more than she cared to admit. She had always been independent, stubborn even, but tonight she realized the gravity of the dangers that awaited her. She wasn't alone anymore, and that realization both frightened and comforted her. "We can't stay here," Tayan said, his voice low but firm. "They will search for you, and the storm is only helping them. We need a safer place, a vantage point where we can watch and anticipate." Mara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Lead the way," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'll follow." Outside, the wind howled like a living thing, bending the skeletal trees and sending leaves and debris flying. The mud beneath their boots sucked at their steps, and the occasional flash of lightning revealed dark silhouettes moving in the distance. Mara's pulse quickened. She had expected danger, but seeing it was entirely different. Tayan guided her to a rocky outcrop on the edge of her property, a natural vantage point overlooking the valley below. From there, they could see the outlines of figures moving through the storm, shadows against the dim landscape. Mara squinted, trying to discern friend from foe, but the rain and darkness made it impossible. "They're here," Tayan whispered. "Someone knows about the land, about your uncle's secrets. And they're not coming for a friendly chat." Mara's hands trembled slightly as she clutched the satchel. "What do they want?" "Control, knowledge, power," Tayan replied. "And they will stop at nothing to get it. That is why you must understand everything your uncle left for you. Only then can we defend it and you." A flash of lightning revealed the figures, clearly 3 men, riding on horseback, cloaked in dark, soaked garments that clung to their muscular frames. Mara's stomach tightened. These were not ordinary bandits. There was a precision, a deliberate menace in their movements. "They are scouts," Tayan said, his voice calm but edged with warning. "They're testing, waiting, observing. We have to anticipate their next move." Mara looked at him, fear mingling with awe. He stood there, shirtless despite the cold and rain, his long black hair and tribal jewelry catching the light of the occasional lightning strike. His body was taut with readiness, every muscle poised for action, and Mara realized that she had never felt safer or more exposed at the same time. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. "We watch, we learn, and we act," Tayan said. He knelt, pointing to markings on the map that Mara had begun to understand. "Your uncle's markers show a hidden path through the ridge, a place only we can access. If they approach the house, we can use it to gain the advantage." Mara studied the map with him, her mind racing to absorb the information. The symbols and lines that had once seemed cryptic now began to make sense. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the storm outside, quick, alert, alive. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed across the valley. Mara and Tayan froze. One of the riders had dismounted, moving silently toward the tree line, scouting. Tayan's hand went to his side, fingers brushing the hilt of a knife she hadn't noticed before. His eyes never left the figure. "Stay low," he whispered. Mara pressed herself against the rocks, heart hammering. The rain soaked through her clothes, cold and biting, but she didn't move. She trusted Tayan. She had to. The figure paused, sensing something, then moved again, disappearing into the darkness. Mara exhaled slowly, though Tayan remained tense, his gaze scanning the horizon. "They are cautious," he said. "But cautious men can be deadly. We have only one chance to stay ahead of them." Mara nodded, determination hardening within her. She no longer felt like the scared, crying woman who had first opened the door to Tayan. She was part of this now, bound to the land, to its secrets, and to the warrior who had chosen to stand with her against the storm, and against the shadows that pursued them. Lightning struck once more, illuminating the valley in blinding white, and Mara felt the storm within her reflect the storm outside, chaotic, dangerous, but alive with possibility. The rain poured relentlessly, turning the ground into a treacherous mixture of mud and puddles. Mara crouched low behind a jagged rock, the leather satchel pressed to her chest, and her eyes never left the shadows below. Tayan stood beside her, shirtless despite the storm, his long black hair plastered to his shoulders, the tribal beads swaying slightly with each movement. His muscles flexed under the harsh lantern-like flashes of lightning, his gaze sharp and unyielding as he surveyed the valley. "They're close," he whispered, voice calm but edged with steel. "One wrong move, and they'll discover the hidden path. We can't let that happen." Mara's heart pounded in her chest. Fear still lingered, but it was now intertwined with determination. She was learning slowly to see the land as her uncle had, full of markers, secret passages, and hidden vantage points. "I understand," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I'm ready." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the figures below, 3 men on horseback, moving cautiously, scanning the landscape as if they could sense Mara and Tayan's presence. One dismounted, creeping closer to the ridge, his movements deliberate and measured. Mara's stomach tightened, but Tayan's hand on her shoulder steadied her, grounding her in the moment. "Stay behind me," he instructed. "If he sees you, they'll attack without hesitation." The rider paused, eyes sweeping the rocks. Mara froze, heart hammering, as Tayan drew a curved knife from his belt. His stance was fluid, predatory, each movement a testament to years of survival and combat. Mara's breath caught. She had never seen a man move with such quiet power. Suddenly, the rider lifted a hand, signaling to the others. Mara realized with a jolt that they had been spotted. Tayan's dark eyes met hers, the intensity of his gaze leaving no room for doubt. "Now," he whispered with astonishing speed, he leapt from the rock, landing silently on the slope between the ridge and the scouting man. Mara gasped, but he moved like a shadow, a blur of muscle and precision. The rider barely had time to react before Tayan's knife flicked, cutting the reins of the horse and sending the man tumbling into the mud. The other 2 riders spurred their horses, racing to investigate. Mara's fear surged, but Tayan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a narrow, hidden passage marked on the map. The entrance was concealed behind a cluster of rocks, nearly invisible even in the lightning flashes. "Quickly," he urged. "This way." Mara stumbled but kept pace, adrenaline sharpening her senses. The passage led into a narrow tunnel carved decades ago by her uncle. It smelled of damp earth and old wood, the walls etched with faint markings that Mara now recognized as protective symbols. She traced her fingers along them, a strange warmth seeping through her touch, as if the land itself was acknowledging her presence. "They're not far behind," Tayan said, glancing back. "We have only minutes before they realize the path is occupied." Mara's pulse raced, but the fear that had gripped her in the shower, in the hidden chamber, was transforming into resolve. She was part of this now, tied to the land, to its secrets, and to Tayan, who had risked everything to protect her. Through the tunnel, they emerged onto a ledge overlooking the valley again, this time on the opposite side, hidden from the rider's view. Mara gasped at the vista. The storm-swept landscape looked both beautiful and menacing, the rolling hills and distant river glinting under the lightning. Tayan crouched, scanning the horizon. "We wait," he said. "We learn their patterns. Then we decide when to strike." Mara took a deep breath, clutching the satchel and map. She no longer felt helpless. She had survived the storm, the hidden chamber, and the initial confrontation. And she was learning to fight not just physically, but with her mind and wits. Reading the land as her uncle had taught her. A flash of lightning revealed the riders regrouping in the distance, their eyes scanning the ridge Mara and Tayan had just vacated. One of them dismounted again, moving cautiously toward the rocks where they had been hiding. Mara's heart pounded, but she felt a new kind of fear, the one that comes not from danger itself, but from knowing you are ready to face it. Tayan's hand brushed hers, a silent reassurance. "We are ready," he said, his voice steady and commanding. Mara nodded, her gaze fixed on the approaching riders. "We are ready," she echoed. The storm raged on, the night alive with danger and possibility. And Mara Duvall, the woman who had cried alone in the shower not long ago, now stood at the edge of destiny, side by side with a warrior who had come into her life as mysteriously as the storm itself. The storm had grown fiercer, rain hammering the rocky ledge and wind slicing through the trees like knives. Mara clutched the leather satchel tightly, her knuckles white, and Tayan stood beside her, every muscle coiled and ready, his long black hair plastered to his wet shoulders, beads glinting faintly in the flashes of lightning. The Apache warrior's dark eyes never left the valley below, scanning for movement. Anticipation etched into every line of his body. "They're circling," Tayan whispered, his voice calm but edged with warning. "They know we're here. Now we must act." Mara nodded, her pulse racing, but determination replaced the fear that had gripped her days before. She had learned to read the land, follow the clues her uncle left, and trust in Tayan's instincts. Together, they were no longer prey, they were hunters. Tayan pointed to a narrow ravine partially hidden by undergrowth. "We'll lure them there. It's tight, confined, they cannot maneuver easily, and we can control the approach." Mara's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she followed his lead, moving silently through the rain-soaked rocks. She noticed how his bare feet made no sound on the slick terrain, how his body seemed to flow with the rhythm of the storm, every step deliberate, controlled. She felt a thrill of admiration, tempered by the danger looming as they reached the ravine. Tayan crouched and gestured for Mara to stay low. "We wait until they enter," he said. "Then we strike. Trust the land. Trust me." Minutes stretched into eternity as they waited, the storm masking their presence. Mara could hear the faint clop of hooves approaching, the crunch of mud under boots, the whisper of the wind carrying voices just beyond the reach of clarity. She gripped the satchel to her chest, drawing courage from Tayan's steady presence. Then they appeared, 3 riders, cautiously navigating the ravine, their eyes scanning every shadow. Mara recognized the tension in their movements. They were experienced, dangerous, but unaware of the trap awaiting them. Tayan's hand brushed hers, a subtle reminder to stay calm. "Now," he murmured with lightning-like speed. He moved forward, his muscular, glistening torso a blur as he disarmed the first rider, cutting the reins and sending the man tumbling into the mud. Mara's breath caught in her throat, but she had no time to be startled. 2 more riders were closing in. Tayan's knife flashed in the lightning, precise and deadly. Mara instinctively followed his lead, using the satchel to distract one rider, throwing a handful of silver charms her uncle had left as markers onto the ground. The noise startled the horses, giving Tayan the opening he needed to subdue the second man. Mara gasped at her own courage, the fear of days before transformed into raw, instinctive action. The third rider hesitated, sensing something was wrong. But the narrow confines of the ravine and Tayan's unyielding presence left no escape. With a swift, fluid motion, he disarmed the man, knocking him into the mud and pressing the edge of his knife near the rider's chest. Mara stepped closer, her hand still trembling, but determination blazing in her eyes. "What now?" she whispered. "We teach them respect," Tayan said quietly, "and we ensure they leave Red Hollow." The riders, defeated but unharmed beyond the necessary bruises, stared at the pair. Mara could feel the power in Tayan's gaze, the silent promise of protection. The storm raged around them, yet for a moment there was calm, a strange, electric calm, as if the land itself was acknowledging Mara's emergence as its rightful heir. "Go," Tayan commanded. "And remember, Red Hollow belongs to no one but those who understand it." The men scrambled from the ravine, slipping into the shadows of the storm, leaving Mara and Tayan alone. She exhaled, rain dripping from her hair and soaking through her clothes, feeling a rush of triumph mingled with relief. Tayan's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. "You've done well," he said, his dark eyes softened by a rare warmth. "Tonight, you've proven more than courage, you've proven wisdom, resilience, and the will to protect what is yours." Mara's lips curved into a tentative smile. exhaustion and adrenaline battling for dominance. I couldn't have done it without you, she admitted. Tayan shook his head. You did it because you were ready. I only guided you. Lightning split the sky once more, illuminating their drenched, muddy forms against the rugged cliffs of Red Hollow. Mara felt the weight of the storm, the land, and tonight's events settle within her. She was no longer the frightened woman who had cried in the shower. She was a guardian of secrets, bonded with a warrior who had come into her life like the storm itself, unpredictable, powerful and impossible to ignore. The rain eased slightly, the first hints of dawn glowing faintly on the horizon. Mara and Tayan stood side by side, soaked and weary, yet victorious. And in that moment, Mara realized that Red Hollow, with all its dangers and mysteries, was finally beginning to feel like home. The storm had finally begun to wane, leaving behind a wet, glistening Red Hollow that smelled of earth and rain. Mara and Tayan stood on the rocky ridge overlooking the valley, the remnants of the night's confrontation behind them. The defeated riders were long gone, carried off by the storm or their own retreat. Yet Mara sensed that the true challenge was not over, it had merely shifted. Moving from external threats to the secrets buried deep within the land her uncle had entrusted to her. Tayan's dark eyes scanned the horizon, his muscles still taut despite exhaustion, his long black hair clinging to his wet shoulders, beads catching the faint morning light. Mara admired the strength he radiated, not only physical, but an inner resilience that seemed to draw the land's power toward him. He turned to her, his gaze softening. You've done well, he said. But your uncle left one final lesson, one he believed only you could understand. Mara's curiosity sparked anew. What is it? She asked, clutching the satchel and journal tightly. Still damp from the rain, he gestured toward a line of ancient oak trees at the edge of the property. Beneath those trees is a well, covered and hidden. Your uncle buried the key to the land's true secret, there a source of knowledge and power, meant for the one who could face the storms, the danger, and emerge unbroken. Mara's heart raced. All night, all the fear, all the lessons, the trap, the hidden chamber, the map, it all led here. She followed Tayan through the mud and puddles, her boots sinking into the softened earth, each step heavy with anticipation. The air was crisp now, almost cleansing, carrying the scent of wet grass and rain-soaked soil. At the base of the largest oak, Tayan knelt and brushed away the wet leaves to reveal an iron ring embedded in the soil. He tugged, and a hidden panel shifted open, revealing a narrow shaft descending into darkness. A faint glow emanated from within, soft and welcoming, like the heartbeat of the land itself. This is it, Tayan said. Only the worthy may enter, and only with purpose. Mara swallowed hard but nodded. I'm ready, she said, determination and courage intertwining in her chest. She descended into the shaft, Tayan following closely behind. The walls were lined with ancient markings, symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Her uncle's handwriting appeared in several places, cryptic but guiding, urging her to continue. At the bottom, they entered a chamber carved from stone, larger than she had imagined, filled with relics, scrolls, and objects of power. The air hummed, vibrating softly against her skin. Mara realized that this was more than a legacy, it was a test of character, of heart, of the will to protect what mattered. Tayan placed a hand on her shoulder. This is yours, he said. All that your uncle protected, all the knowledge he kept hidden, is entrusted to you. But with it comes responsibility. The land, the people, and the balance itself rely on your choices. Mara stepped forward, eyes wide, absorbing the enormity of the chamber. She reached for the first scroll, feeling a warmth spread through her fingers. It wasn't just knowledge, it was understanding, clarity, a sense of connection she had never felt before. Her uncle's foresight, Tayan's guidance, and her own courage had led her here. For a long moment they stood in silence, the storm outside replaced by the gentle whisper of the wind through the trees above. Mara realized she no longer feared the unknown. She had faced danger, embraced the land's secrets, and discovered strength she hadn't known existed within her. Tayan's hand brushed hers gently. "You are ready," he said, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Red Hollow will thrive under your care, and its secrets are safe because of you." Mara smiled, tears of relief and triumph mingling with the last droplets of rain on her face. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You could," Tayan replied softly. "I only guided you. The strength was always yours." They emerged from the hidden chamber into the first rays of dawn, the valley bathed in golden light. Mara looked around, seeing Red Hollow not as a place of fear or isolation, but as a living, breathing world she was now part of. And at her side, Tayan, the warrior who had come into her life as mysteriously as the storm, stood ready to face whatever came next, not as her protector, but as her equal, her partner in the legacy of Red Hollow. For the first time in years, Mara felt peace. She had survived, learned, and embraced her destiny. The storm had passed, but its lessons would remain, shaping her and Red Hollow for generations to come.